Alright, baby. This time, in this video, I'm gonna talk about why it's evil to thirst for knowledge, baby. And you've all heard how in the Bible it says that it says that when Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge, that was when humankind was cast out of paradise. And so I've found myself that it was against God's rules to thirst for knowledge, to eat from the tree of knowledge, because God wasn't wanting to place God wasn't wanting to place all kinds of restrictions on our lives in order to make our lives unbearable and less fun and whatnot. The reason for it, I think, is because he had our best interests in mind. Because God had our best interests in mind, I think, by not wanting humankind to eat from the tree of knowledge. And you see, I was the kind of person in life who sought out knowledge myself when I was young. But rather than being an appetizing pasture of green grass with abundant fruit everywhere, personally I think that knowledge is actually a mine. I think knowledge is actually a minefield, and even though it's tempting to seek out that knowledge and accumulate it so you can come off as being wise and knowing lots of things and just being able to satisfy your own curiosity and all. Well, I've found it's very risky business, because you might end up instead, whilst trying to consume and swallow all of that knowledge, you might actually end up taking on board a mine, if you know what I mean. A mine which will totally destroy you. A mine which will totally destroy you and ruin you in life. And I feel like that happened to me when I was younger. when I was about 20 years old, I used to read up about lots of things on Encarta, Microsoft Encarta back then, because this was the days before. This was the days before Wikipedia, and before search engines were so fast that you could type something in and you'd have answers in like a second or so. Back then you had to use things like Encarta if you wanted information, and one of the things I typed in back then was information about fleas. Don't ask me why I was wanting information about fleas. What can I say? I've always been a curious type. And I found out that humans swallowing certain kinds of fleas can cause. I found out that humans swallowing certain types of fleas can. I found out that humans swallowing certain types of fleas can cause the growth of very long tapeworms inside the human body. Worms so long, I'm talking about that they've got to stay curled around your various internal organs and whatnot to stay inside your body, since they wouldn't be able to fit inside if they stayed stretched at their whole natural length, so to speak. And even though I don't have that same crushing fear of swallowing, getting worms growing inside me anymore, I still find it absolutely revolting, the idea of swallowing fleas and other small insects and flies and hairs and whatnot. And so that's one of the reasons why sometimes I will get the repeated urge to slobber, like I'm doing now. To slobber all over myself, yes. And I can imagine that's not really a very nice way to be, is it? It can be rather harmful to one. It can be rather harmful to one's social life, as I'm sure you can imagine, along with my myriad other flaws, along with all my many other flaws and failings in life. And another reason why I feel like it's evil. I feel like it's evil to thirst for knowledge, is because really you've got to be careful where you feed on that knowledge, and you got to be sure that it really is knowledge and not just someone's opinion, haven't you? I mean, these days most people probably believe that up in the sky, past the ozone layer, there is space up there all around us, don't they? A big black void with no air, no oxygen, no sound, no nothing, which you can't breathe in, which supposedly the rest of the universe, supposedly once you're in space, you've got the whole universe and the galaxies around you and all, yes. But when I was young, I used to find that fascinating, to be honest, especially with programs, TV shows like Star Trek and all, which nurtured my fascination for planets and space and exploration and alien races and all that jazz. But the thing is, shows such as Star Trek tend to directly oppose Christianity and God, don't they? Some people think that shows like Star Trek did that having good in mind, wanting to advance human knowledge and promote equality in the world between all human races and whatnot. But it's funny how Star Trek never embraced Christianity and Christians as equals, isn't it? That's something which all the liberals and equality-loving crybabies never seem to acknowledge with Star Trek, isn't it? Yeah, baby. And have you noticed how often in shows like Star Trek, various ships and star bases and star bases and what have you, they'd often be named after like Greek gods and other myths from other more obscure religions rather than Christianity. For instance, in Star Trek there'd be starships called Prometheus and whatnot, which I think was some kind of a Greek god or something. And there'd be Apollo class starships and whatnot, and then there's shows like Babylon 5, where I think the space station in that show was called Babylon 5, I'm not sure. And as you know, Babylon is the Babylon 5 space station was most likely named after the ultra sinful city which incurred God's wrath in the Bible, known as Babylon, a city which I'm not sure might have once been favoured by God, without they call it the Great Whore and all. But from what I've gathered, the residents of that city maybe turned against God and started embracing sinful lifestyles. And the next thing you know, God had to take drastic action against them while sparing the people in the city who were ostracized, who stayed loyal to God and His ways. And you might have noticed similarities in today's world to the story of ancient Babylon and whatnot. I mean, here in England and in America, for instance, nowadays it's the cool thing to be an atheist, isn't it? It's the cool thing to speak out against Christianity and God, to embrace science and to mock Christians as being naive and ignorant and whatnot, isn't it? But I think that what's happening now, the beginning of widespread discrimination against Christians, is actually the same thing as what ended up happening in Babylon. In other words, I think Britain and America are the New Age Babylon, so to speak. And I honestly feel that if we don't try to, if we don't encourage people, if our societies don't become more godly, and if our society if our societies don't if our societies don't support Christian principles in a more steadfast manner, I feel it's only a matter of time before Britain, before our great Western nations get wiped out by God's greater power. We must never forget that we're small and weak and, I was going to say, almost insignificant compared to God and his power and wisdom. But the truth is, we're not forgot what word I used. We're not insignificant with how God loves us so dearly and all, but naturally, when you love someone and they don't live up to your principles, and they don't live life according to how you taught them, you're obviously going to be very upset and hurt and feeling betrayed, aren't you? And just like a parent, God obviously feels it's necessary to maybe punish his children sometimes when they behave unacceptable, maybe, I'm thinking, yeah. And another reason why I consider knowledge a minefield, going back to the subject of space again, is that the Bible tells us, I think, I'm not sure, but it maybe tells us that the earth is flat, doesn't it? And possibly anyway, and that rather than space up above, it's the heavens encompassing all the surroundings of our earth and whatnot, and that there's no other planets, no other galaxies, no other alien species perhaps, and there is just us. It's God's creation, like we're all in a big snow globe, with God being the one watching our actions and whatnot. Yeah. And even though in a way it seems exciting to think of space and the galaxy and the possibility of alien races and all kinds of other strange and unimaginable phenomena out there in the galaxy and the universe, I think it's also very scary. Some of the things that scientists and other so-called great thinkers propose, such as the idea of the sun having a finite lifestyle and eventually expanding to become a huge red giant which will either envelop our earth or just fry everyone. Of course, that isn't going to be in our lifestyle, that in our lifetime, they say. They say that kind of thing could happen in like millions of years' time or whatever. But I think it's still an incredibly disturbing idea to think of the sun expanding to such a size that it either gets very, very close to our Earth or envelops our Earth completely. It makes me think of this TV program I once saw where it was like a space and astronomy type documentary, and it was talking about the lifetime of the sun, and saying how it would grow to a red giant stage eventually, and that would pretty much be the end of all life on Earth, and then eventually it would go supernova, destroying most of the entire, or maybe most of the solar system and whatnot. So as you can tell, scientific types and physicists paint a very glum vision of the future according to what they think will happen, don't they? Yeah. And it's funny how when physicists and whatnot talk about what they think will happen, it's always in thousands or millions of years' time, isn't it? It's the same with evolutionary theory. It never happens in our lifetime, and it's never apparent to us who are living in the world now, is it, for us to see and test and experience for ourselves. No, you've just got to mindlessly believe them, haven't you? And yet they claim us Christians are so... and yet they always claim us Christians are so naive when we supposedly blindly believe in the things the Bible says and its explanations for the world and life as we know it, don't they? Yeah. I just find the hypocrisy of that kind of thing rather appalling and abhorrent myself. Yeah. And I've got that fear of the sun from that fear of the sun that I have largely stems from documentaries like the one I mentioned before that I saw on TV, and also this episode of The Twilight Zone that I once saw called The Midnight Sun, in which the Earth's orbit around the sun had somehow changed so that the Earth was gradually getting closer and closer to the sun, and the Earth was gradually getting more and more inhospitable to humanity and all life in general, I suppose. Supposedly it was possible to fry eggs on the street pavements, and the oceans were boiling, and people were flocking en masse to Canada, where it was going to be cooler for a short time before eventually it would have gotten too hot to support life there as well. Yes, it's quite a nightmarish episode, I'm sure you can imagine. And it was terrible to watch that episode in summer back in 1999 as well. And one of the most disturbing visuals, I think, from that episode was a painting that I saw in it. A painting of Big Ben, I think it was, or some kind of tall tower or building or something, and the sun was looking massive behind it in the painting. Yeah, very disturbing indeed, I think. And so personally, that's why I don't really think it's healthy to believe Personally, I don't think it's healthy to believe scientific explanations for things all the time myself, especially when they're overly pessimistic, depressing, or scary myself. I think that's why I think it's better to trust in God to tell us everything we know and give us all the wisdom we need to know, And that's why I think more people should read and take into heart the messages, tenets, and explanations of the Bible myself. Yeah. Straying away from God's knowledge and instead absorbing the so-called knowledge of others such as physicists and whatnot, is something I believe to be a most harmful endeavor, a most harmful endeavor in the long run, in the long run. And so, essentially, that's the reason why I feel that it's evil to thirst for knowledge. And so with that food for thought, I bid you all farewell, friends and family. And until next time, see you all on the flip side, baby.